Seeing Matt Murdock in Spider-Man No Way Home made me go, because it can mean only one thing. We are getting more Daredevil. After season 3 ended on Netflix, we were not even close to being done with this character. And not just the character, but Charlie Cox's perfect portrayal of him. And now that we know he's back in the MCU, which would mean the Netflix show is also part of the MCU, right? The Daredevil series kicks some serious ace and has established so many stories to expand off of in future seasons. Which leads us to the title of this video, Matt Murdock's Top 10 Courtroom Dramas. Oh wait, hold on, that's another video. Let's see, here we go. Daredevil stories we need to see in the MCU. Let's dive right in.
Prepare for Dave!
First, let's take a quick look at the storylines that have already influenced seasons 1 through 3 of Netflix's Daredevil. And no, we're not going to be including the 2003 Daredevil movie. Sorry, Benny Boo Boo. Anyway, season 1 focused on 2 major storylines that gave Daredevil one of the best comic-to-screen origin adaptations ever. Frank Miller's The Man Without Fear and Gang War. Season 2 explored the odd couple that was Daredevil and Punisher. Brought us The Hand and a variation of Elektra's arc with Garth Ennis's The Choice, Frank Miller's Bullseye vs. Elektra, and a ton of hand war storylines. In season 3, we saw Kingpin's return to power, Bullseye's awesomeness, Matt Murdock exposed to the FBI, his struggle with some serious internal conflict, and then beating the slap out of Kingpin, with Brian Bendis' Out and Hardcore, Frank Miller's Born Again and Gang War, Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil, and David Mack's Parts of a Whole. Now it's time to look at a few storylines that would make one Hell's Kitchen of a season 4 of Daredevil. Mind you, there's really no way to fully adapt a comic book storyline beat for beat into a show that's already 3 seasons in, while still fitting it within the MCU. So we're going to explore some elements from 3 stories that could influence both a new season of Daredevil and ways he could show up in future MCU movies. First, let's begin with a single issue that isn't even a Daredevil comic, but features Daredevil in a very significant way that could establish a major bond between 2 heroes. This issue, entitled All My Sins Remembered, comes from Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man comic, written by Peter David. In this story, Daredevil stops Spider-Man, who's donning the black symbiote suit, teased at the end of No Way Home, from ultimately killing Stanley Carter, aka the Sin Eater, who could easily emerge in Spider-Man 4. With Peter Parker's return to good old-fashioned street-level crime fighting at the end of No Way Home, something I'm pretty pumped about, Sin Eater, being a street-level criminal with a very interesting backstory, could be a pretty cool first-act foe for Peter as he returns to fight the criminal underworld. Man, I could go on, but this is about Daredevil. Since we saw Matt Murdock show up in No Way Home, he and Parker will definitely be meeting again, and I think this storyline is the perfect way to do it. Spidey is overtaken by anger brought on by the symbiote suit, and Daredevil is the only one who can stop him from his regretful rampage and bring him back to his original principles. I mean, for one, it would be so cool to see Daredevil fight Spider-Man. But it would ultimately establish the friendship and team-up of the decade. Murdock, being older, more experienced, and having been chewed through the criminal underbelly and spit out, makes him the mentor Peter needs right now as he enters that world. Aliens are one thing, but the Mafia is a whole different beast. You damn right, no purple-skinned goon is gonna mess with us, right, boss? The next story comes from Wolverine, Enemy of the State Part 5, written by Mark Miller. Daredevil and a brainwashed Wolverine come face to face in an epic fight that ends with Daredevil knocking the sense back into Wolverine with an ancient martial arts move known as Dumbbell in Face. Not only would it be flat out cool to see Daredevil and Wolverine go at it, but these 2 crossing paths makes a lot of sense if you take a closer look at the end of Netflix's Daredevil Season 3. The doctor working on Bullseye's spine is Dr. Kenji Oyama, aka Lord Darkwind, the father of Lady Deathstrike, and the creator of the adamantium infusion process which gave Wolverine his metal claws. And since we know mutants in the X-Men will be entering the MCU, this seems like a great way to introduce Wolverine. But besides a badass brawl with the Savage Weapon X, what does this mean for Daredevil? Well, for starters, Being that Wolverine is after Elektra, who is still alive in the series, this would be a unique way for Daredevil and Elektra to reunite, face off, and continue dealing with that complicated relationship. I'm thinking a spin-off series starring Murdock and Elektra. It'll be a couples sitcom called... The introduction of mutants can also bring us one of Daredevil's fiercest foes, Typhoid Mary. Bottom line is that Dr. Oyama cameo at the end of Season 3 opens many doors, and this story just has so many elements that can be incorporated into an MCU Season 4 of Daredevil.
It's right, it fits.
Okay, moving on to our final storyline. First, I want you to picture a possessed Daredevil in black declaring martial law in Hell's Kitchen, erecting a prison called Shadowland, and leading an army of hand ninjas. This insanely cool event happens in Shadowland, written by Andy Diggle, Anthony Johnston, and Marco Cicchetto. Let's start with how strong elements of this story can directly connect with where Season 3 of the Netflix series left off. Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, was defeated and sent to prison, keeping the secret of Daredevil's true identity in exchange for his wife's safety.
This means that Fisk won't be able to do away with Daredevil the old-fashioned way, see?
But in Shadowland, he does something very interesting that would make fans lose their minds, which is summoning Ghost Rider to get the job done. We know Ghost Rider will be showing up in the MCU sometime in the near future, so this would make perfect sense. And how is Fisk able to summon Ghost Rider? Why, from an ancient scroll stolen by Lady Bullseye, of course. Duh. A villain who can take over after Daredevil does away with Bullseye. Yes, that's another thing that happens in Shadowland. As we see in the end of the 3rd season of Daredevil, Poindexter, aka Bullseye, is still alive and being operated on. What's interesting in Shadowland, and could once again introduce a character yet to make their MCU debut, well, technically he was in No Way Home, but from another universe, was that Norman Osborn was the one who sent Bullseye to kill Daredevil. This wouldn't just introduce Norman Osborn and Oscorp, but his Hammer organization meant to replace S.H.I.E.L.D. or possibly S.W.O.R.D. in the MCU. Bullseye fails to kill Daredevil and ends up blowing up a condemned building filled with innocent protesters. The possessed Daredevil becomes enraged and does the one thing he swore never to do, which is end his enemy's life. And in that story, he does the deed to Bullseye with a sigh. If Season 4 of Daredevil wants to go this dark?
Damn.
Alright, let's look at how the Shadowland story can connect with MCU characters. Now, it's unknown whether the Defenders from Netflix will cross over into the MCU, but in the comic, they all unite to fight against Daredevil and his Hand Army. There's a cool fight between these new and familiar characters, Tarantula and White Tiger versus Misty Knight and Colleen Wing. Shang-Chi also gets in the mix, coming fresh off his own MCU feature film, and it doesn't end there. Spider-Man joins the bunch. Then, the Punisher gets in on the action.
Oh, yeah!
And I'm not even going to entertain the idea that it won't be John Bernthal. Then who else joins the party? Freaking Wolverine, who goes toe-to-toe with Daredevil. And wouldn't you know it, here comes Moon Knight. Gee, doesn't he have a show coming out soon? In the end, after failed attempts by Foggy and Elektra, Iron Fist is able to use his chi to purge the Beast Demon who's been possessing Murdock. And even though Murdock wasn't completely in control, he struggles with having to face the fact that he completely ended Bullseye's life. In Shadowland, he leaves the city after confessing his sins, which could be a very interesting ending to a Daredevil Season 4. It would give the audience total uncertainty whether he will return. But ultimately, he'll get over it and make a triumphant return in Season 5 to defeat... As a notable mention, I can almost guarantee we'll see Matt Murdock in the upcoming She-Hulk series. But if you're interested in reading a comic book storyline featuring these two, I highly recommend She-Hulk Volume 3, written by Charles Soule.
Informative.
And now it's time for my final thought, which is, no matter which comic book adaptation you choose, Marvel, please continue with the mature audience rating.
I'm not kidding.
Now, before you start losing your minds in the comments, I am well aware that there are way more comic book storylines the MCU could adapt to the screen. So let us know which ones you'd be the most excited to see.
But be nice.
Then like and subscribe for more CBR. Bye-bye.